Andre might be a legend, but behind the scenes he wasn't exactly well liked. From explosive racist blow-ups toward Bad News Brown,
and he started making these racist remarks, and he started throwing the N-word around,
to humiliating Big John Studd so badly he vanished from the locker room.
When I saw John Studd get the crap beat out of him, picked up his bags, walked out of the dressing room, and never saw John again.
And his feud with Kamala.
I said, Andre, let me tell you one thing. The longest day you live, don't you ever f with me like that no more.
WWE legends are now finally revealing why Andre the Giant was quietly taken out of the picture. Kamala.
And it's a great story in your book, and it's kind of an infamous story with you, is Andre the Giant was a bit racist towards you, and apparently you pulled a gun on him.
Our first story takes us back to the early 1980s, to a territory wrestling promotion called Mid-South Sports, and to a confrontation so explosive that it very nearly ended in bloodshed. The man at the center of this tale was James Harris, better known to wrestling fans as Kamala, the Ugandan Giant. Born on May 28, 1950, in Senatobia, Mississippi, to sharecropper parents, Harris grew up in extreme poverty on a cotton plantation. His early life was marked by hardship, including the unsolved murder of his father after a dice game. The systemic racism of the era shaped him, toughened him, and gave him a survival instinct that would serve him well in the cutthroat world of professional wrestling. By 1982, Kamala had been transformed by Jerry the King Lawler into a cannibalistic savage, complete with face paint, body paint, a leopard skin loincloth, and a tribal mask. He would howl, slap his belly, and pretend to eat raw meat during matches. It was a gimmick rooted in offensive racial stereotypes, but it drew massive crowds and big paydays in the racially charged South. And then came the night when Kamala was booked to wrestle Andre the Giant for the very first time in Oklahoma City. Let's hear it from the man himself.
But here's the thing, the first time I ever wrestled Andre the Giant was in Oklahoma City in 1982 for Mid-South Sports. So I had never wrestled him before. And I might have did get a spot mixed up. And Andre threw me up off him, and he called me a dumb SOB. And he jumped up. When he come up, that's when I beat the hell out of him. Right there in the ring. And I mean, that was for real.
Now, let's pause and consider what just happened. A relatively new wrestler, during his very first match with the biggest star in the industry, just beat the hell out of Andre the Giant in front of a live audience. In his autobiography, Kamala Speaks, Harris wrote that he backed Andre into the turnbuckle and beat the Giant Hotel shit out of him, landing multiple legitimate blows while Andre, hindered by his acromegaly weakened state, couldn't effectively defend himself. But the story was far from over.
And after that next night, we were wrestling each other in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So anyway, I had this 357 Magnum. I put it in my pocket, and I went over there to Andre the Giant in his dressing room. I stuck my finger on his nose, and he threw up both hands. And now, he didn't see a gun. He just threw up his hand to "I'm sorry," with that big smile on his face. "I'm sorry, boss. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that or do that. I'm sorry."
Think about that for a moment. Here was Kamala, a 410-pound man, walking into Andre's dressing room with a loaded 357 Magnum in his pocket, ready to use it if the Giant made a wrong move. Let's hear more of the confrontation.
I said, Andre, let me tell you one thing. The longest day you live, don't you ever f with me like that no more. I said, I would kill you. He said, "Oh, boss," he was pointing at his head. He said, "Oh, boss, I'm sorry. I don't think. I'm sorry, boss. I don't think." You know, with that French accent. I said, "Well, motherfucker, get the tinking from now on. You better get the tinking from now on."
And remarkably, that confrontation changed everything. From that day forward, Andre and Kamala had what Kamala described as great matches. Everywhere we went. Andre even became responsible for Kamala getting into the WWF. Kamala even had his girlfriend sew a hidden pocket into his wrestling trunks to conceal a .22 caliber pistol, which he later replaced with a pocket knife that he carried for 15 years. Even after Andre's death in 1993. But if one confrontation proved the Giant could be humbled in private, the next would expose him in public, drunk, reckless, and saying the one word that could end everything on a crowded bus in Japan. Bad News Brown. If Kamala's story taught us that Andre could be humbled when confronted directly, our next tale reveals an even darker side of the Giant, one that involved racism, alcohol, and a tour bus in Japan that nearly became a battleground. Alan Code, known in wrestling as Bad News Brown, was no ordinary wrestler. He was an Olympic bronze medalist in heavyweight judo at the 1976 Montreal Games, the first American to medal in the sport. This background gave him legitimate fighting credentials, including black belts in judo and other martial arts, making him one of the toughest shoot fighters in the business. In 1980, during a New Japan Pro Wrestling tour, Code found himself on a long bus ride with several wrestling stars, including Hulk Hogan, Dusty Rhodes, and Stan Hansen. And Andre the Giant was in the back, heavily intoxicated, doing something that would change their relationship forever. Let's hear it from Bad News Brown himself.
And he started making these racist remarks, and he started throwing the N-word around and everything. And I'm like half asleep, and I can't believe what I'm hearing. You know? What? So then I said Hogan, not Hogan, excuse me. I said, Giant, Andre. Yeah, what is it? I said, you watch your mouth. I said, I don't like what you're saying. I said, that's an insult to me, you know. And so he didn't say nothing. And then he, as the bus was going, he says, bad news. I said, yeah. He says, go f*** yourself. So I told the bus driver, pull over.
Now here's where the story takes a terrifying turn. Hulk Hogan, who was sitting directly behind Bad News Brown, would later tell him what he was thinking during that confrontation.
He says, Alan, I'd like to tell you something. And I said, what is that? He says, you know, when I saw you reach out in your bag, he said, I ducked up under the chairs. And what are you talking about? He says, I never seen nobody talk to Andre like this. I figured this guy's got a gun. He's going to come out, he's going to turn around, he's going to shoot him, look over, see me, and then he's going to shoot me.
But Bad News Brown wasn't done. He didn't sleep that entire night, stewing over the disrespect. The next morning, he waited by the hotel elevator. When Andre stepped off, Code confronted him outside.
And as he got off the elevator, I said, Andre, I want to talk to you. What is it? I said, let's go outside. He didn't want to go. I said, no, let's step outside. If I wanted to do something to you, I'd have jumped you as soon as he got off the elevator. Let's go outside right now. And I told him, I said, look, I don't appreciate the way you were talking on the bus. I said, you never hear me insult your people. He said, well, you know, I'm Polish and people. And I said, you don't hear that from me. So if you feel that way, that's your business. I don't have to listen to that nonsense, you know? I said, don't let me ever hear you say that again. So he apologized.
The tension between them lingered for years. They would work the same tours, but never speak. But remarkably, before Andre passed away in 1993, they buried the hatchet, sitting down and talking through their differences. Andre apologized, and they made peace. Sometimes men fought back. Other times, the Giant didn't wait to be challenged. He decided who deserved pain and turned the ring into a courtroom with only one verdict: the Iron Sheik. If the stories of Kamala and Bad News Brown showed us that Andre could be confronted and humbled, our next tale reveals what happened when someone couldn't fight back, and Andre decided to teach them a lesson they would never forget. Hossein Khosrow Ali Vaziri, the Iron Sheik, was a former Greco-Roman wrestler who had served as a bodyguard for the Shah of Iran. His amateur wrestling background made him a notoriously stiff worker, delivering moves with real force rather than pulling punches. And Andre absolutely despised this. According to Bobby Heenan, Andre hated how Sheik treated weekend warriors, the jobbers with day jobs who were just trying to earn extra money without getting legitimately hurt. Tom Pritchard has stated that if Andre didn't like you, he had all the power to make you look bad in the ring. Let's hear what Pritchard had to say.
It's funny, like, if he liked somebody, he really liked them, it seemed like. If he didn't like them, he just hated their guts. Like, him and Kamala didn't get along. Him and Bad News Brown just seemed like he just hated their guts, flat out.
Yeah, I think that goes not just with Andre, but I mean with anybody in the business or anybody in something like this where you see each other every day, and sometimes you're not the most people who don't have manners or respect and things like that. And maybe the Sheik's habit might have caught up to him.
On September 7th, 1984, at Nassau Coliseum in New York, Andre delivered what many describe as a 20-minute legitimate beatdown on the Iron Sheik. From the opening bell, Andre dominated utterly. Sheik got in zero meaningful strikes as Andre mauled him with hip tosses, suplexes, and slams executed with full force. Andre stood full weight on Sheik's back multiple times without using the ropes to lighten the load, a move he reserved for opponents he truly disliked. But the Sheik had his own grievances against Andre, specifically how the Giant treated his fans. Let's hear it straight from the Iron Sheik.
And then we go Paris, we go London, we go Japan. People come asking for autograph. The little baby and mother, he tell the little baby and mother, no, get the out of here. After that he was a non-giant next to me. He was the little mouse. And that's because he's gone and we are up. See, what's going wrong, come back wrong. So he was a big giant, but he was a jabroni big giant. Fuck him and he's gone.
The Sheik's hatred ran so deep that he once symbolically spat on Andre's image during a shoot interview, calling him a piece of shit, no good motherfucker, who didn't care about fans or fellow wrestlers. Their animosity never resolved. Andre passed in 1993 and the Sheik in 2023, with no public reconciliation ever recorded. And when warnings were given but not respected, the message wasn't delivered backstage. It was delivered with a fist. Michael refused to participate in a part following the screw job. The reason? Michaels was genuinely afraid that Owen might shoot on him. Wrestling terminology meaning to for real with the intent to actually hurt your opponent rather than cooperate the illusion of combat. This fear was not entirely unfounded. Owen's loyalty to his brother was legendary, and the rage he felt toward wronged Brett was no secret backstage. Whether Michael's concerns were justified or simply a convenient excuse working with someone from the Hart family remains a matter of debate among historians. What is certain is that this situation derailed Owen's Hart push. A darker character direction should have elevated Owen to new heights in the company. The genuine backstage Owen and Shawn Michaels was emblematic of the larger conflict.
He was never willing. He hated the Warrior.
Right, that's what I'm saying. To put him over in 10 seconds.
And that was the Vince thing. And yeah, I don't know. Because that, I guess, it was probably more his idea to do it in 10 seconds because he didn't want to be in the ring at all with the Warrior. Not for 10 seconds. So for him to do the job in 10 seconds was less painful than to have to be in the ring with him for 2 minutes.
Gotcha.
Because he hated.
I was going to say, it's been said
between the Hart family and Michaels' notorious backstage faction known as the Clique. This group, which also included Triple H, wielded enormous influence behind the scenes, and their ongoing rivalry with the Hart family created countless moments of friction during this era. Of the Clique and their conflicts with Owen Hart, one member in particular seemed to delight in antagonizing the youngest Hart brother, Triple H. Triple H, born Paul Levesque, was a central figure in the even more influential faction known as D-Generation X. As a key player in backstage politics that defined the WWF during the late 1990s, Triple found himself directly opposed to the Hart family on multiple occasions. His conflicts with Owen Hart were notable for how they blended antagonism with very real behind-the-scenes tension. Perhaps no moment better encapsulated the disdain that DX for Owen Hart than when Triple H and his began referring to Owen as a nugget. This wasn't just a playful nickname. In wrestling parlance, calling someone a nugget was essentially calling us insignificant. Some didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. For a talented Owen, who had spent years one of the best technical wrestlers in the world, this was a deliberate insult to undermine him. From 154-204. Owen Hart, the last remnants of something that Big John Studd, standing at 6'10" and weighing nearly 400 pounds, made the fatal mistake of thinking he could share that distinction. Let's hear from Demolition's Axe about what happened.
When I saw John Studd get the crap beat out of him, picked up his bags, walked out of the dressing room, and never saw John again, because John refused to not step over the top rope. Why would you do that? That's Andre's gimmick. At least when you're wrestling Andre, be cordial enough to step under the top rope, not over the top rope, when you've been asked by the guy that does it a number of times, and he paid the consequence.
But the top rope wasn't the only issue. According to former Intercontinental Champion Ken Patera, Studd began using growth hormone in his mid-30s, growing 3.5 inches taller and acting like a fucking giant. Andre, who lived with the natural consequences of excess growth hormone from acromegaly, resented this artificial enhancement. But perhaps worst of all was the promo that sealed Studd's fate. Jake the Snake Roberts recounted on his podcast. He did an interview where he said Andre wasn't a giant, he was a freak. And Andre took offense to that, and that was it. Shit hit the fan. Calling Andre a freak, directly referencing his medical condition and appearance, was the ultimate insult to a man who was deeply sensitive about his acromegaly. Let's hear Arn Anderson describe what happened after the top rope incident.
I do know he had heat with the wrong cat, and that was Andre the Giant. And they had a hell of an episode where, and this is a behind-the-scenes thing that you learn later, but I guess the Giant had a quirk. He didn't want anybody stepping over the top rope.
Yeah.
That was for the Giant and the Giant only. And I guess he put the word out, And Big John Studd just disregarded it, stepped over the top rope, and the Giant beat the crap out of him.
The Undertaker, speaking on Hotboxin' with Mike Tyson, stated it plainly. He, on several occasions, damn near killed Studd. At WrestleMania 5, when Studd served as special guest referee for Andre vs. Jake Roberts, Andre used the opportunity to pummel Studd with such force that Jake later joked he feared one of his body parts might hit him. But sometimes the feud wasn't about size, power, or dominance. Sometimes it was about something so small and ridiculous, it made the hatred even more real. Randy Macho Man Savage. Of all the feuds Andre the Giant had with his fellow wrestlers, perhaps none was as petty, yet as persistent, as his beef with Randy Macho Man Savage. And it all came down to one thing: baby oil. Would oil himself up before every match to make his muscles glisten under the lights. It was part of his gimmick, part of what made the Macho Man larger than life. But Andre absolutely hated it. Let's hear from Lanny Poffo, Savage's brother.
First of all, Randy and Andre didn't get along at all.
Oh, really?
Right.
Yeah. And the reason was baby oil. I saw baby oil. And Randy's answer was, yeah, your gimmick is being a giant. My gimmick is baby oil.
The oil created practical nightmares for Andre. Due to his gigantism, Andre struggled with everyday tasks, including showering in standard hotel rooms. Getting baby oil off his skin after grappling with Savage was especially aggravating. It stuck to him and required extra effort to clean. But there was an even deeper reason for Andre's hatred. Andre's daughter, Robin Christensen Rusimov, revealed that her father had no tolerance for steroids and lost all respect for Savage after he was caught using them. Andre, who had refused surgical treatment for his acromegaly because God made him this way, resented wrestlers who artificially enhanced their bodies through steroids. In a 2004 interview, Savage himself acknowledged the one-sided nature of their encounters. What are you going to do against Andre the Giant? He described Andre as a warrior who was in pain all of the time, but still tried to pass the torch the correct way. As the years passed and his body began to betray him, his patience grew thinner, especially with the next generation who moved faster than he ever could. Bam Bam Bigelow. Bam Bam Bigelow was nicknamed the Beast from the East for good reason. Standing at 6'4" and weighing around 390 pounds, what set him apart was his extraordinary agility. He could perform high-flying maneuvers like cartwheels, moonsaults, and dropkicks, moves typically reserved for much lighter wrestlers. But this agility would prove to be a problem when he stepped into the ring with Andre the Giant. By the late 1980s, Andre's acromegaly had progressed dramatically. He wore a back brace under his singlet, could barely bump, and struggled with basic mobility. Matches against Andre felt like wrestling an immovable brick wall, and Bigelow's agile, high-energy style clashed dramatically with Andre's immobility. Worse still, Andre reportedly viewed Bigelow as a cocky young wrestler who hadn't paid his dues. Bruce Pritchard described what happened when Andre decided to teach Bigelow a lesson. Andre didn't like Bam Bam. Go back and watch some of the matches. You can see it. Andre grabs him by the shirt and throws him like a rag doll. On June 25th, 1988, at Madison Square Garden, the clash reached its peak. From the opening bell, Andre dominated utterly, delivering hip tosses, suplexes, and slams with full force. Andre stood, full weight on Bigelow's back, threw real slaps and tosses, and used the match to teach a lesson to the cocky upstart. The fallout was immediate. Immediately after the match, Bigelow stormed backstage and gave his notice to quit the WWF. He couldn't handle the physical punishment and humiliation. Bigelow left for Japan and independent circuits, not returning to WWF until 1992, long after the Andre encounters were behind him. And then there was the one rivalry fans thought was built on fear, but behind the curtain, it was something far more dangerous than panic. Jake the Snake Roberts. In the late 1980s, one of the most compelling storylines in WWF involved Andre the Giant's apparent terror of Jake the Snake Roberts' python, Damien. First, it's worth noting that Jake Roberts himself was actually terrified of snakes. In multiple interviews, Roberts has openly admitted that snakes scared the piss out of him, noting that he never got used to being bitten. As for Andre, Roberts has consistently stated that Andre wasn't afraid of anything and sold the fear masterfully to fool audiences. The phobia was all part of the show, kayfabe designed to give Roberts a psychological edge over the seemingly invincible giant. But there was one real-life incident involving the snake. During one of their matches, punches, Damian bit Andre's shoulder, breaking off 2 fangs, about 2 inches long, that embedded in his skin. Andre didn't notice at first and continued wrestling. In the locker room, while playing cards, Rick Rude pulled the fangs out. Andre laughed, said the snake must be hungry, refused a Band-Aid, and claimed it would stop bleeding on its own. Despite the kayfabe fear, Andre's real frustration with Roberts was similar to his issues with others. He simply didn't like certain people. Roberts, who was tasked with taking care of Andre in matches due to his worsening health, suffered injuries like a torn pectoral from Andre's clotheslines. For all the stories of him intimidating others, there was still one man who made the locker room go silent, the only presence that could make the giant hesitate. Haku. We've heard story after story about Andre the Giant intimidating, punishing, and dominating his fellow wrestlers. But there was one man who turned the tables, one wrestler who made even the 8th wonder of the world think twice. His name was Haku, also known as Mung, and he is widely regarded as the most legitimately tough and intimidating figure in professional wrestling history. Bobby Heenan, who managed both Haku and Andre in WWF during their Colossal Connection tag team run, made a stunning revelation. Mung is the toughest man, not just wrestler, I've ever met in my life. The only 2 men in the world that Andre the Giant feared were Mung and Harley Race. To understand why, you need to know about Haku's reputation. Stories abound of his terrifying feats. He once reached into a man's mouth with 2 fingers and broke off his bottom teeth after the man mocked wrestling as fake. In another incident, he bit off a man's nose in an airport fight. He once snapped police handcuffs while restrained behind his back and fought off 8 officers after being maced. During one alcohol-fueled encounter in the 1980s, Andre offended Haku and immediately backed down when confronted. This was virtually unheard of. Andre was the locker room boss, the enforcer who humbled everyone else. But against Haku, even Andre knew better than to push his luck. Eric Bischoff recalled that the entire WCW locker room would go silent when Haku got annoyed. During the 1998 DX Invasion angle, Vince McMahon reportedly told DX to run if WCW sent Haku after them. That's how fearsome his reputation was. And finally, not every downfall came from fists or grudges. Sometimes it only took a bottle, a bad decision, and the wrong man watching. The Fabulous Freebirds. Our final story takes us to 1984, during the WWF's Rockin' Wrestling era. The Fabulous Freebirds, Michael P.S. Hayes, Terry Bam Bam Gordy, and Buddy Jack Roberts were brought in as part of the promotion's crossover push with MTV. Their edgy party animal image was perfect for the era that included Cyndi Lauper and celebrities, but the Freebirds had a problem. They were exactly what their image suggested, rock stars who loved to party. Their WWF run lasted just 57 days, during which they wrestled only 16 matches as a unit, and the reason for their departure has become a legendary tale involving Andre the Giant, who served as a backstage enforcer. According to Michael Hayes himself, the pivotal event occurred during a house show in Ohio, likely at a high school gym. Hayes, thinking they had the day off, had been drinking beer and taking pills. When they arrived at the venue and realized they were booked to wrestle, Hayes protested, "I can't work." Andre the Giant was already there, serving as the backstage agent, playing cards and halfway through a gallon of wine. Gordy and Roberts helped a stumbling Hayes down the stairs to the locker room. Andre spotted him, pointed, and declared, "He's drunk, he's messed up." Gordy and Roberts denied it, throwing up their hands. But when they let go, Hayes fell flat on the floor, confirming Andre's assessment. The match that night went terribly. Hayes attempted a top rope move, caught his toes on the rope, and took a nosedive. Feeling guilty, Hayes called Vince McMahon the next day to confess and stood himself off. The Freebirds effectively walked out after this, and when Hayes met with McMahon in Toronto, he thought things were okay. But Booker George Scott called to say McMahon no longer trusted him and wouldn't rehire the group. Hayes has repeatedly debunked the myth that Andre directly fired them on the spot, calling it a great story and a great legend, but noting that Andre may have suggested it. Vince made the final call. Either way, the Freebirds never returned to WWF as a unit. If you enjoyed this video, click on the boxes playing on your screen to watch similar content.